Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our third session of the day of Turn Digi. I'm SEO Joe Blogs, Joe Juliana Turnbull, and I'm a freelance SEO consultant and also growth marketer at Authoritas. I put on Turn Digi as I want us to be able to still connect and see others, albeit virtually, as we're not able to meet in person. And Turn Digi is an online event where people from any background in online marketing can share their tips. It's also to help promote entrepreneurs, and also we have a diverse range of speakers. So today I'm streaming from Barcelona. We have Steve from Cardiff, Poppy from Ipswich in England, and Francine from Boston over in the US. So we actually have three countries, two continents today. So we have some great tips where we have from Steve, Poppy, and Francine. Please drop your questions in the chat. We will be answering them afterwards. And do tweet at TurnDigi2. Also, if you're enjoying the session, which I'm sure you are, please do click a nice little like button for our video and also subscribe to the TurnDigi YouTube channel. So thanks very much for our speakers, Steve, Poppy, and Francine, for joining us, giving up their time today to share some insightful tips, and also to our audience for joining. I'm now going to pass over to Steve, who's going to give us some very good tips about really how to get more SEO clients. Now, Steve is a freelance consultant. He actually has his own book, but I'll pass over to Steve, who can go into more details about what he has done.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Do I need to wait for you to stop sharing your screen before I share mine, or can I just go ahead?
Just go ahead.
I will do that. Bear with me a moment. Right. Can you see the slides on my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Hello, everyone. Steve Morgan, freelance SEO. I'm going to be talking to you today about how to get more SEO clients. I'm going to jump straight in because I think I've only got about 10 minutes and 5 minutes Q&A. So apologies if I talk really fast. Firstly, a bit about me. I've been doing SEO for over a decade, and I've been freelancing for the last 7-ish years of them. I blog with an SEO blog called SEO No, and I've also recently started a blog called anti-sell.com. I wrote a book called Anti-Sell as well, which has gotten some good reviews and won a few awards. So you can see in the pic there that I'm holding as a medal I got from one of the awards, which is lush. And a couple of fun facts about me. I'm a big fan of rock music. At the moment, I'm especially obsessive about Japanese rock, also known as J-rock. And I'm a big fan of D&D, which is Dungeons and Dragons, which I've always been a bit of a fan over the years, but the last sort of few months with lockdown and everything, it's become obsessive. So here we go, 10 ways to get more SEO clients. And I should have added this in the tagline, in a non-salesy way. So some of them will probably be quite obvious, but I'm going to try and shy away from the really obvious ones like go to business networking events and talk about some stuff that's more relatable to people who don't like sales and networking. Let's start with number one. This is quite an obvious one, I guess, which is just to go to SEO meetups. Now, saying go to SEO meetups feels a little bit silly at the moment because of lockdown. Obviously, a lot of these communities have moved online, not just the actual events, but the community side of it as well, if it's done on Twitter or if it's done on meetup.com and sites like that. So you might still be able to chat to people. And even though in an SEO meetup or an SEO community, you might mostly be chatting with other SEOs who might be, your competitors. It could be other agency folk. It could be other freelancers. There'll probably be some in-house people. And I should have mentioned this in my intro, I run a Cardiff SEO meet. And we often get small business owners come in who want to learn a bit how to do it themselves. And then people who are dedicated professional SEOs in the audience will meet them and might end up doing some work for them. My second tip following on from that is to go to non-SEO meetups. But what I mean here is closely related meetups as well as going to SEO meetups. So I've got a great example here of I've spoken to Brighton SEO 3 times now. I did the recent online version, but years ago I did it twice in person. On one of the smaller stages, a bit sort of size to the guy on the left. I probably only got, I think, 1 inquiry out of that from both those talks. Not to say that I did it to try and get inquiries, but you know what I mean. And then the other event, that kind of size audience, was a web developer meetup, probably 50 people at the most. I did a talk there, and within 2-3 days afterwards, I had about 6 inquiries from people who said, oh, I saw your talk at the event. The difference, I think, is, as I kind of mentioned with number one, you go to an SEO event, there might be you're essentially networking with your peers. But at a web developer meetup, I might have been the only SEO there. I might have been the only doing the only SEO talk in an entire year, for example. Same goes for if I went to a blogger meetup or a copywriting meetup or a social media marketing meetup. It can be a really good way to, if you go to those kinds of events, you might find that you're the only SEO there with a room full of people who may not know how to do SEO, but know people who need SEO. So that's a really good tip that's worked well for me over the years. Another really obvious one, speak at events and meetups. But again, sort of carrying on from that previous tip, speak at events that aren't just SEO events. Don't get me wrong, events like Brighton SEO are great. But speak at a web developer meetup, speak at something else meetup. This was a photo from a few years ago when I spoke at a designer meetup, and I gave a talk that was SEO for designers. So it lent more on sort of image SEO. And I had one of the best inquiries I've ever received from someone in the audience at that event. Run your own thing, whether it's a meetup or conference or an event, a webinar, podcast, Twitter chat. I'll cover more about what those are later, or an online community like a Facebook group. Just if you run your own thing, then you are sort of like the figurehead for that community. Because it's safe as an event. If you go to events, you chat to a handful of people, you might get known. But if you run the event, then everyone's going to get to know who you are by default, basically, because you're the person running the event. How can they not? You're the one choosing the speakers, introducing them. Same with podcasts and other things. You can be really cheeky here. And one technique you might want to consider is, say, if you have like 3 dream clients, 3 heads of SEOs at big companies local to you, they could be your speakers at the event. They could be your guests on the podcast. They may not have known who you were before, but they do now. And the next time they need help from a freelancer, or if for those of you who work in an agency need to hire an agency, you might be like, who was the guy or girl who asked us onto the podcast? Oh, yeah, it was so-and-so. So that's a little bit cheeky. You obviously want to, invite people on who are good and not just invite the people on who you want to have as clients. But it's a good way to get onto the radar of people who you really want to do some work for. Contribute to Facebook groups. So obviously, contributing to SEO groups is great. But 2 examples have worked really well for me are Cardiff Start. So that's entrepreneurs and startups in Cardiff. And my co-working spaces members group. And both of them, especially Cardiff Start, have really strict no self-promotion policies. If you go on there and say, hey, buy my SEO services, I'm an SEO freelancer, you will get banned like straight away. But you go in there and you help people. If someone has an SEO query, you answer it. If someone just needs some other help, and it might be like, can anyone recommend an accountant? And you say, oh, well, here's an accountant I use. Just stuff like that. Over the years, it's gotten to the point where if someone does leave a post on there saying, can anyone recommend an SEO person, I often get tagged and name dropped. So that's even better, because instead of me having to sell myself, other people are selling me for me, if you will. And yeah, just to reiterate right at the bottom there, don't sell. Whatever you do, don't go in and just sell yourself. It's good, you can have a bad time. Twitter chats. So in the SEO industry, we know about things like SEO chat, SEMrush chat. Again, using the tip, piggybacking on the tip before where I say go to semi-related communities. So Content Club UK is copywriters and content marketers. And there's 2 freelance themed ones as well. And there's an example question from one of them on the right. And again, I might be the only SEO going along to those. And then those people get to know me and then might refer me work in the future. You might think, like, a really good example, which is quite surprising, is I used to get involved with a blogger a blogger Twitter chat. And you might think, well, what's the point? Because, you obviously get professional bloggers and some people can make a lot of money from blogging, but a lot of the people in the chat were hobbyists. But one of them, as well as having a blog as a side project and a hobby, worked for this huge consultancy in London. And then she said, oh, I remember you from the Blog Hour Twitter chat. The people at my work were looking for an SEO. Can you help us? So you never know who works for somebody or who knows who. So it's worth getting involved with those, even if you think, maybe is it worth it? Co-working. Now, I know Joe, the host of Turn Digi today, is a big fan of co-working. I'm a big fan of co-working too. And what's happened with COVID and lockdown has broken my heart. This is actually my co-working space, where this is a press photo they did shortly after reopening. And as you can see, everyone's kind of sat as far away as possible from each other. And they've reduced the size of the main room, like capacity, by like a third. Obviously, everything's up in the air at the moment. Hopefully, touch wood, things will go back to some sort of normality in the coming months and years. In the meantime, one idea might be to some co-working spaces have virtual memberships that might be as little as like 10, 20, 30, 40 pound a month, where you pretty much get all the benefits except for going in the building. So you can still network and connect with all the people in the community. You might still have all their resources. For instance, some co-working spaces like mine do training videos and then they save them online and members can access them. So there might still be worth, even though it seems ridiculous suggesting, hey, join a co-working space during these times, there might still be some sort of angle you can do. But yeah, when things return to normal, co-working can be great for networking. And what I do as well, I'm permanently based in one. And prior to lockdown, I used to try and visit a different one elsewhere in Cardiff and South Wales, where I'm from, like a different one every month, so that I can just kind of chat to people and get to know people as much as possible. Create useful resources. I appreciate this sounds like the wishy-washy, hey, create great content technique. But this example here might help to explain what I mean. This is a map, again, not really useful right now, really useful, earlier this year and before this year, a list, a map of all the co-working spaces in South Wales. And this gets shared. I don't even have to share it. This gets shared by other people. Sometimes it gets linked to, so that I'm thinking of the SEO benefits there, tying it into the SEO, but it often gets shared on like that Facebook group I mentioned, where someone will go in and say, can anyone recommend a co-working space in South Wales? And somebody will say, oh, I'll do one better. Here's the link to Steve Morgan's list and map. And that's great. I don't even have to be the one to share it. Other people are sharing that for me. And it's another time my name gets mentioned. People get to see me, things like that. Number 9, we still ask you really quickly because I'm conscious of the time. Host a free advice workshops. So this was a member of my co-working space who years ago did what they call a tune-up Tuesday. So they just sat down at a table and said, if anyone wants any free marketing advice, come and say hello and we'll help you. Some of those people probably didn't come on to be clients. Some did. And it might be that even those that didn't come on to be clients passed other people to those people. So it's kind of like that altruistic. If you help somebody out, they'll feel obliged to want to help you out in return by saying, to their friend, I know these guys help me out with some marketing stuff. Maybe you should hire them. And the last one as well, just ask your happy clients. It's very easy to just think, we just ask our clients for testimonials. But ask them if they know anyone who needs SEO help at the moment. Not just your current clients, but so long as you left on good terms, your past clients as well. They might even have a bit more work for you as well, depending on the circumstances. I'll quickly summarize. So the most important tip I can give you is target semi-related industries. So don't just get involved with SEO events, SEO communities, SEO webinars, but think of all the sort of areas dotted around SEO. It seems like a really obvious one. Get yourself out there, make yourself visible. What I mean here is you're not, unfortunately, going to get known. And if you hide yourself away, you have to, I know it makes people uncomfortable, but you have to put yourself out there. Self-promote by helping, not schmoozing. So with that, a Cardiff Start Facebook group example, don't go in just only caring about yourself. It's really obvious. Go in, help people, and it may take time, but it should and will lead to work. And the most important thing is don't sell, which sounds ironic. The main line in my book is the best way to sell is not to sell. And it sounds ridiculous, but it does work. Trust me. So this talk was inspired by a blog post I wrote that gives 15 ways to get SEO clients. So if you want to read some about some of these in more detail and maybe see one or two more, go to anti-sell.com/SEO. And lastly, I just want to give a shout out to my book, Anti-Sell, Marketing Lead Generation Networking Tips for Freelancers Who Hate Sales. Available in a few different formats. It's won a few awards and it seems to do pretty well on Amazon. So anti-sell.com/book. And I think I've gone a little bit over 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Steve. Very impressed with your book as well, as it won so many awards. You can still show it if you want. It's quite a big thing to...
If I share my screen, I can hear you, but I can't see you. So if I share my screen, I'm just looking at that slide. So that's the way I've set it up, I think.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you.
That's very impressive for that. We have some questions from the audience just about really, I suppose, how long it would take you to win business from an initial contact on average?
I hate to use the classic answer in the SEO industry, which is it depends. It really does. There's a business networking group that sometimes say don't expect anything within 3 to 6 months, maybe even a year. I've known people who say the first time they attend, they get work out of it. So it really can depend, unfortunately. and I think a lot of it is down to obviously where you choose and how you put yourself out there and present yourself, but a lot of it is down to luck. You might just happen to, like, your first post in like a Facebook group, somebody helping somebody out, somebody might say, hey, I need your help, or it might, take weeks or months. And obviously the longer it takes, the more you might be thinking, is this the right group for me, or is this the right event or webinar I should be going along to where I'm networking? It's one of those things. I didn't really touch about this much on the talk, but the best thing to do is just do the stuff you enjoy more. So I like Cardiff Start because, as well as running my own business, I'm passionate about, people starting a business and things like that. So it makes sense to be part of that community anyway, regardless of the fact that I might be able to help people with SEO, or the fact that, I might get a client or two out of it, because I just enjoy talking to people in there. So if you tie it into like your passions and your strengths, then not only are you probably going to get results quicker, but also it's not going to feel like work. It's not going to feel like a slog. So if it does take longer, you're going to be thinking to yourself, do you know what? I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying getting to know these people, rather than being like, a few months in and being like, is this a waste of my time? So unfortunately, that can be one of the trickiest parts, is knowing when to think, is this still worth getting involved with? Because what if you give something 3 months and nothing happens, and you think, right, that's it, I'm done with this place, I'm not bothering with this group anymore. But if you'd have given it 1 more month, it could have been worthwhile. So that's the biggest challenge, I think, out of all of this.
Yeah, I think yes, it does depend on the client. I find that if you just stay quite honest with your costs up front, it does tend to show if they're serious or not.
That's
and
true.
also and just say, oh, my payment terms are 14 days or whatever. And what about your work? Do you find that it's more short term or long term? And when I say long term, I would say more than 6 months.
I've been very lucky in that I definitely the long-term side of things. So a lot of my work is retainer. I do one-off work, and I do, and sometimes it might just be a small one-off project. It could be just like a 1 month thing. A lot of the work I do is kind of like on an ongoing monthly basis. And some of my clients have been with me for years. As I mentioned at the start, I've been freelancing for about 7 years now, and some of my clients have been with me for 5, 6 years. So, because I guess with SEO especially, it's not just a case of getting them, we all know, don't we, that it's not just a case of getting them to the top of Google, it's getting them to stay there. So with some of them, I stay on board to keep it going, to sort of at maybe like a lower rate, just to kind of keep things ticking along. Or if, say, for instance, they target new like products or services. I've been very lucky in that a lot of my work has been long term, which certainly makes things easier for that. If I need to, it's very, touch wood, it's not very frequent that I, lose a client or part ways with a client. And then when I do, I might have somebody who I've met through, say, that Facebook group or my co-working space, or somebody who I've got on like a little sort of waiting list, who then I can be like, you said you wanted to do SEO at some point. Are you, you're still looking for somebody, and then take it from there.
Yeah, and just about that, you said, yes, you've been very lucky with your clients, which is great. How long did it take you to actually build up your business so that you were earning, good salary?
That's a good question. I went into it already knowing quite a few prospective clients. So luckily, like, I managed to win a bit of work straight away, but I only won a little bit. And I left a full-time job to go full-time freelance as well. I usually recommend people, they should transition, maybe do like a bit of freelancing part-time, evenings, weekends, and then transition when the timing is right. It probably took about 3 months until I broke even from all my initial costs. So things like hiring accountants, getting a website done, getting business cards, getting all the software I needed, your whole Screaming Frog and Majestic and Moz and all that. And then the first year was quite quiet. And I think it's because obviously the expenses were high and the income was low. It probably took a good year or so until I matched my last salary, which was at an agency. And it probably took about 2 to 3 years until I was at a good position to, I would say, probably a better salary. These days, I'm not saying this as like a humble brag, but my salary is better than my previous agency, and I only work 4 days a week. So I think some people get carried away with freelancing thinking, oh my God, I'll be earning 6 figures. And that's the thing that's kind of heard and sold to. And apparently, there are some freelancers who do earn that. I'm happy that I'm earning about the same, maybe a bit more, and I'm working less. So I've got 2 young kids, so it means more time with them.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Because I was going to ask you, like, if you're working more, if you're earning more, but are you taking your holidays? So yeah, if you are doing 1 day a week less, so that's 4 days. That actually equates to your holiday, your sick
Yeah.
day, and a few national holidays. So I think that's a very good balance. So
Yeah,
thank you
because
very
it is
much.
as a freelancer. Okay, sorry.
No, no, no. I was just saying, yeah, thank you for that. So no, as a freelancer, what were you going to say?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I think I mentioned this in my Brighton SEO talk recently. I'm notorious for like, it's very easy when you're employed to say, oh, I've got these hours, these days I need to use up, and I'll book this like week-long holiday. As a freelancer, that is so much harder. And it wasn't until a few months into lockdown that my wife said to me, have you taken any like holiday time at all? And I'm like, holiday time? I'm a freelancer. But yeah, it's probably worked out about the same as if I take no holiday time, but work 4-day weeks, I probably am working the same. So that's one thing to watch out for as a freelancer, is it can be, unless you're consciously thinking, right, this week in like October, I'm going to make sure I don't have any work. It can be really hard to just, every week goes by and you just work, in my case, those 4 days and think nothing of it. So that's just one thing to watch out for. It can be very sort of easy to just get carried away with that.
Yes, a good point. Yeah, but I think it is important to have your designated days and have your time off.
Yeah.
And would you also be able to share that link in the chat to us?
Yes, I will. In the comments, in the comments, not the private chat. Yeah.
In the comments, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, I will.
Thank you
it's
very
not
much.
letting me.
Oh, is it
Okay.
not?
No, it's
Oh,
I can only comment in the private chat section. Sorry, Joe.
okay. Well, then if you send to me, then I will put it in.
Cool, I will do. I'll send it to you on. I'll put it in the private chat.
Great, thank you.
Cool.
Well, those are interesting tips. I'm freelance as well, so yeah, a lot of them resonated with me. And if anyone has any questions, please ask further ones. We do have a bit more time afterwards. But without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Poppy, who will then take us into Google Ads really, and how you can maximize this, no matter what budget you do have. So let me just pass over to Poppy. Thank you.
Perfect. So yeah, thank you for joining. What I'm going to be talking about is how you can essentially reserve more of your ad spend and make it work harder within your Google Ads account. As we kind of go forward, I'll show you that Google are very good at showing how you should be spending your money, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will lead to more conversions. So just a bit of background about me. I'm the Senior Paid Media Specialist here at Strategic. I have over 3 years experience of working across loads of different paid media platforms, including Google Ads for both national and international clients. And as will become apparent in this presentation, I am in the midst of wedding planning, so there is a lot of wedding references in this presentation. Okay, so before I get started, it's probably important that I set the scene and basically show you how Google Ads has become the beast that it is. So Google Ads is actually responsible for 97% of Google's revenue, so it really is their bread and butter. And since it launched, revenue has increased year on year without any substantial dips. So one of the reasons for this is the continued growth, but more recently, they've been providing recommendations as to how you should be spending your budget. And in a lot of cases, these recommendations are great at spending money, but not necessarily delivering results. So what I'm going to show you is kind of different tips and tricks as to how you can make your ad spend work harder in your account. So the first thing is keywords and campaign structure. So this is essentially the building block of any PPC campaign. Before you commit to keyword research, it's really important to question what you're trying to achieve. Is it a particular number of leads? Is it a certain amount of revenue? Is it to create brand awareness? All of these questions will help inform kind of what terms you include in your account and what you want to go after. You also need to have a look at how much budget you actually have, because if your budget is quite small, you're going to want to keep that pool of keywords that you bid on relatively small as well, so they can essentially work harder within your account and you're not stretching yourself too thin. So once you have all of your target terms, you then need to split them out into sort of relevant themes. So for example, if I was a wedding planner and I was looking to offer my services through Google Ads, I potentially look at splitting my ad groups in terms of management, planner, organizer, and coordinator. What that will allow me to do is craft relevant ad copy for each of those particular terms. The trick here is to make sure that the user's search query, the keyword you're bidding on, the ad copy and landing page experience all marry up, because what that will do is it will increase your quality score and give you less reliance on the need for bigger bids and budgets within your account. So tip number 1, select keywords based on your business objectives and structure these terms into common themed ad groups. So this then brings me on to negative keywords, which is one of the most effective ways of reserving your ad spend budget in your account. So you essentially want to build a list of terms that you don't want your ads to appear for. So whilst you can build up the terms you don't want to appear for, there's also a lot of terms that you may want to consider. So for example, if you offer premium services, you may want to add terms such as budget and cheap as negative terms to better qualify the clicks as they come through. You may also want to include derogatory terms, so like worst or horrible. What this does is it massively protects your brand. So you can see for this example where I've typed in worst wedding dress shops, a brand has appeared for that term that they probably don't want to appear for. Most recently, so the easiest way to kind of build out your negative keyword list was to keep a really good eye on your search query report. But within the last couple of weeks, Google Ads have said that we're going to limit how much information you can actually see in there, which is really frustrating for advertisers. So a trick to get around this is to actually build out your negative keyword list as you build out your target list. Because what you'll do is you'll go through this research and you'll identify terms that you don't want to appear for. And then if you upload that list before your campaign goes live, you're essentially minimizing that wasted spend even before you click go. So tip number 2 is don't neglect negative keywords and build out the list before your campaign goes live. I'd also say that this needs to be updated on a regular basis. For example, with COVID, we've seen a lot of terms that we wouldn't necessarily consider. So you've kind of got to keep a track of it and just make sure that you're adding terms on a regular basis. So tip number 3 is about bidding method. So there is a lot of argument within the PPC community about what's best, manual versus automated. And while I don't rule out automation completely, I always prefer manual because it gives me a greater sense of control. Before you look to use automated bidding strategies, you need to basically question whether you have enough data in your account. So Google recommends that you have 30 conversions within a 30-day period to basically make assumptions as to how it should spend your budget. One thing I would say, though, is that this isn't a guarantee that you are going to reach your results. And whatever you do, when you turn on automation, do not just leave it and expect to get results. Otherwise, you might as well just chuck your budget out the window. So in a lot of cases, automation actually takes a lot more effort and time than manual bidding strategies because the spend can ramp up quite quickly. So if you are looking to use automation, in some cases, it may work really well for you, but just it's something to bear in mind. So tip number 3, never launch a campaign with an automated strategy, especially if your account has little conversion data. And if your campaigns have been on pause since lockdown and the pandemic, and you want to reactivate them again, make sure they're on a manual bidding process. Because the auction is in such a different place than when you, at the start of the year, Google's got to try and work out again kind of where it should start and where it should be placing your budget. This then brings me on to daily budget. So most campaigns run on a daily budget. So say, for example, you have a monthly budget of £3,000. You'd expect your daily budget to be £100 based on a 30-day month. However, quickly, Google came out and said, actually, we could spend 20% more of that each day. So your daily budget could actually be £120. And then a couple of years ago, they said, actually, we could spend 50% more than that. So your daily budget could end up being £150 a day. So your monthly ad budget, in theory, could actually be £4,500 worth of spend. But Google do caveat this. So they say with all Google Ads campaigns, you won't be charged more than your average daily budget multiplied by the average number of days in a month. So essentially what this means is that if it overspends 1 month at one day, it will underspend the next. So you'll get a nice even period within that month. However, I would make sure that you consider this if you're running campaigns for shorter periods, especially if you've got Black Friday promotions coming up. You really need to be mindful of that daily budget and how much you're spending. You may also find in your account where a campaign is flagging that it's limited by budget, which basically means that it needs more budget in order to serve. If you click into these recommendations, you can see that quite often they'll want you to bump it up by a significant amount. One thing I would do is take it with a pinch of salt and don't listen to it and don't up it just to please Google. Make sure your account is fully optimized in every way possible and use upping your budget as a last resort. So number 4, monitor daily spend against your budget and don't up your budget just because Google says so. And then my final tip is about location targeting. So with PPC campaigns, it's really important to understand kind of where your business can operate, what locations it can service and what it can't. Google gives 2 location targeting options. So you can target people regularly in your location, or you can target those who have an interest in your location, which sound fairly similar, but they are completely different. And Google's default is, of course, to target people only that show an interest in your location. So what this essentially means is that if I'm searching for wedding venues near me in Ipswich, I then end up getting served ads based in Derbyshire. And for anyone that doesn't know, that's nearly 3 hours away. So I wouldn't necessarily consider that to be near me. So just be mindful of the keywords that you're bidding on and that location setting. I'd always say look to target only those that are in specific locations. So my final tip, be mindful of your location settings and take into account the keywords in order to qualify the intent. So just a quick summary of the key takeaways. So number 1, select keywords based on your objectives and group these into common themed ad groups. Number 2, look after your negative keyword list. Number 3, don't trust automation on delivering results. Number 4, monitor daily budgets against daily spend. And finally, only target locations you service in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Poppy. I had a question that you mentioned regarding spend. Why is it that if you set like a monthly spend, can they do 50% more of that?
So most search campaigns, you set a daily budget. So you say, for example, I only want to spend £10 a day. What they've came out and said is that actually we could spend 20% higher of that, or 50%, sorry, to take into account fluctuations in sort of volumes of traffic. So it may overspend one day and then underspend the next, and over a month it will sort of even out. It's quite a clever tactic that they use and something that they don't tend to highlight. LinkedIn advertising also uses it as well. So you have to be really careful about how they spend their budget. When you set up a campaign, they're very clever at hiding the sort of targeting options and settings that help to sort of reserve your spend. So it's really important that you kind of check through all of those settings before pushing anything live.
So you were saying about, about low budgets, and actually Mike here has talked about, could you actually set a low budget as low as £10 a day?
It depends on kind of what industry you're in. You'll find that some industries are less competitive than others. Whereas, some campaigns that we run, we're looking at keywords where it's like £50 a click. It is that competitive. So it really does depend on the industry that you're running in. But with a lot of our clients, we kind of look at the data and just make sure that we're targeting those keywords that are going to generate results and are going to generate a lot of irrelevant traffic, and really kind of forming that into a structure.
And just about Google paid ads then, we've seen, even if you're running low budget campaigns, people have been sent emails, oh, hi, do you want to talk about your ads? Mm-hmm. And it looks like it's coming from Google. But when you respond to that, there's no answer really. Why bother sending an email like that?
Yeah, I know. It can be really frustrating. And anyone that has got on a call with a Google rep, they are essentially just salespeople. They don't have a real understanding of kind of what you're trying to achieve and what your business objectives are. So they'll look at the recommendations tab, which a lot of the time is, let's just up your budget and you'll receive more results. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, there must be other things that means I haven't got to rely on more budget. There should be other things in the account that you can account for. And I'd say upping your budget should be your last resort. There is a lot that you can do in a search campaign to really prove it and make your budget work a lot harder.
So should we just ignore those emails from people then that say, oh, let's have a chat, when actually you reply and they don't get back to you?
I personally would, yes.
Yeah. So they don't actually want to talk to you then.
Yeah.
Okay. And back to what you're saying regarding you don't need to spend loads. So we have another question about, could you actually spend £50 a click on?
Yeah. So we work with sort of a payment compliance company, and that is extremely competitive. And the amount of money that these companies are kind of plowing into Google, the more competitors you've got in there, the more the bids are going to just ramp up. So it's not out of the blue to see target keywords where they want £50 a click. If it is flagging that it needs £50 in order to reach that first page bid, I'd say don't up it just because Google is saying so. Make sure that your landing page experience is as high as it could possibly be. Look at your ad copy. Is there anything on the landing page that may be making people not convert? Make sure that keyword has got a strong conversion rate before you start upping it. Otherwise, you are literally just wasting spend.
Okay, well, some good advice there. Thank you very much. We've already had quite a lot of advice from Steve and Poppy, and we'll have one from Francine in a minute. We've got quite a few people watching the show today, but just got 7 likes. So if you are really enjoying it, do click that like button and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Oh, one other question from Yogi. What about, this is another one. Could be the answer is depends. What about the thoughts on, what do you think about bidding on brand terms when your brand appears organically below your paid list?
So if you're looking to bid on your own brand terms, I don't rule it out at all. If you bid on your own brand terms, these are fairly low level. And if you're struggling from an organic perspective, it can just help to kind of increase your visibility in that SERP. What I would kind of say don't do is bid on competitor terms, because that's where it starts getting really messy. You start wasting spend. The intent level just isn't there from the user. You end up getting in a bidding war, and it's just not worth getting involved with. So by all means, bid on your own brand term if you're struggling from an organic perspective. But avoid competitor bidding at all costs.
Okay, well, we will definitely do that. Thank you. So I will now bring in Francine, who will be sharing her insights around Google paid shopping campaigns and shopping campaigns for beginners. Thank you very much, Steve and Poppy. And I'll pass over to Francine, who will give us some nice insights around how you can set this up, even if you haven't yet already. So I'm going to pass over to you, Francine.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your invitation here. I'm so excited to be speaking at Turn Digi this morning and teaching you all a little bit more about Google Shopping campaigns. So these are our paid guys as well. So before we dive into that, a little bit about myself. My name is Francine Rodriguez. I'm a manager of customer success at WordStream. I am from Puerto Rico, a beautiful island in the Caribbean, but I currently live in Boston. This year, I had the great honor to be voted one of the top 50 most influential people in PPC. And some fun facts about myself. I love anything Disney, which you will see very, very soon. And my favorite holiday, and I know it's not technically a holiday, but I don't care, is Halloween, which again, you'll see very, very soon. So today, you guys, I want to discuss The Nightmare Before Christmas. And that may not necessarily be my favorite film, but actually what I'm talking about is the holiday shopping season. And as a digital marketer, it is quite nightmarish for us because it's where most of our work begins. So it's a very intense time. And this year specifically is more intense than ever. If you think that the holiday shopping season is coming up, you're wrong. It actually already started in September. And as most of you know, Amazon just did their Prime Day. They usually do it in July. They moved it to October, and all the other major e-commerce retailers did also sales the same day because holiday shopping is proven it started already. So why is this such a big deal? Because e-commerce right now is at an all-time high. With the pandemic, we all knew that people were shifting their buying habits online. But here in this graph, you'll see this is a tweet from the CTO of Shopify. At the beginning of the pandemic, every single day, they were seeing the same level of traffic as that you would see normally on Black Friday, which is the number one, online shopping day, and Cyber Monday as well. So imagine going from like the single weekend of the most shopping ever and translating that to every day for over a month. And if we think about it, March and April are not big holiday seasons. Like we're not shopping for a very specific occasion. So this year, it's gonna break records, I'm sure. So we have to be prepared for it. So as we know, shopping is king. So let's talk a little bit more about these shopping ads. And here's a picture of how they look. I call them the more visual ads in the SERP. So let's break down the anatomy of one of these ads. So the first thing you're going to see is the product image, a product title, the price, the store name, and sometimes below you'll see things like enhancements. These are special offers, maybe ratings, or customer reviews. So the first thing that we have to say is like shopping does not have any keywords, which is very scary for everyone in the world of SEO and PPC, myself included. How do we do this with no keywords? Well, it's actually this really fun and exciting spreadsheet. You have to sign up for a Google Merchant Center account and download this very intimidating spreadsheet with every line is one product with tons of information about that product. And this is it. You don't manually create ads. You don't manually add keywords, which I know is very, very scary and a nightmare before Christmas, essentially. But there's still things that we can do to optimize. So how do we shopping optimize? Let's talk a little bit about that. So the first thing that we need to do is talk about the feed. In the feed, as I said, that's where all the information comes from. So it's essential that we optimize it as best as we can. The two main places that you should be looking at first is your title. That title should contain your brand, the product name, the product type, maybe the size or the color. And you have two limits of characters within that product title, which is very interesting. The first one you'll see is 35, and then the second one you'll see is 150. So 35 is what you'll actually see in the ad. So here's an example of a little ad for Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, black, and then we don't know the rest, because the first 35 characters cut it off. Now, when we go to the actual product, you'll see that it's a black, light, village, and figurines. Now, how do you optimize this? Well, it should be very obvious. Put the most important thing at the beginning. Unfortunately, the name of this movie is very, very long and essentially took all the title. So if I were to optimize the shopping ad for this specific product, I would make sure that the black, light, village figurine would be the first thing, and then you can put the title of the movie. And put as much as you can in these descriptions, because this is the information that Google is going to use to create your ad and matching people to the ad. So essentially, these are your keywords. So the second thing that you need to optimize is your description. You have up to 10,000 characters, and this is not visible in the ad, as you can see. What you want to do is describe absolutely everything about this product. Over describe it, because you have a lot of space to do that. And one thing I tell people is to use your landing page description as a hint of where to begin. So if I were to be describing these specific cookies, I'd be talking about the flavors that the cookies come in. I'd be talking about the characters in those cookies, the sizes, are they individually wrapped? How does it come shipped? What are the ingredients of those cookies? Are they gluten-free or nut-free or easy for pets to eat? Whatever it is about these cookies, you want to absolutely describe it until you cannot describe those cookies anymore. Because all of this is going to be what Google is going to be using to match, again, you to the correct queries. So the better you describe it, the better you're going to match. And then once you have your feed set up and you create your first campaign, how do you actually optimize your shopping campaigns? Well, this could be a whole presentation onto itself, so I'm going to give you three main things. The first thing you want to do is, once you have everything uploaded, you want to subdivide your products into categories, and then you're going to bid accordingly to those categories. How you subdivide it is very personal and depends on what you are selling. So the first thing you can do is by price. Maybe you have super high value items and then some lower value items. You want to bid on those differently, obviously. Maybe you want to do it by product type, pants, hats, shirts, socks. All these things could be separated out. And then another way to do it is by dividing your best sellers. So there are many, many different ways. And if you have questions about it, please let me know. I'd be happy to discuss it with you, your individual case. The other thing you want to be doing is you want to be excluding your underperforming products or exclude products that are very, very low price. For example, if I'm selling a small pencil of a Nightmare Before Christmas character, maybe that pencil is less than £1 or less than $1, that's not going to be worth it. A click on that is still it's probably going to be the same price of the item. So you want to exclude those. Anything that we really are not going to get a return on investment, we want to get out. And then that third thing we want to make sure we do is we're going to add our negatives from the search term report. Poppy discussed this. It's still an important strategy for us to be doing in shopping, is always reviewing that search term report and getting everything out. We don't want to be wasting our spend. So those are some initial shopping campaign tips and tricks. But there is another strategy that you could do. There is smart shopping to the rescue, because I know a lot of what we talked about is a little bit overwhelming. Sometimes dividing and how to bid and how to do all of our negatives, it's not our strong suit. So these types of campaigns can also help you out and make things a little bit easier. So essentially, smart shopping does it all. It makes sure that your ad is shown on the SERP, on the display network, on YouTube, in Gmail. It also includes remarketing. In the standard shopping campaign, you would have to do each of these individually or on your own. And what smart shopping does, it's going to take all of Google's insights and everything that you provide them in the feed. You still have to give them that feed, and they're going to marry these two together to choose the right bid for each user for each auction using machine learning technology. So it takes a big task off your plate. Now, with smart shopping, you have to have 3 requirements to get them started. You need to have e-commerce conversion value tracking, the ability to do remarketing with a list already created, and your Google Merchant Center feed account. With regular shopping, you do need to have conversion value tracking and Merchant Center feed, but you don't necessarily need to have your remarketing list ready to go. Now, there's a lot of great things about smart shopping, but there's also some things that are a downside. So the first thing is you cannot view your search terms report. With smart shopping, Google's pretty much running the show for you, and you cannot manage your negatives as well. And the other thing is that if you change your budgets very frequently, it can reset the learning period for these types of campaigns. And while you still can subdivide products and exclude products that won't make sense for your business to advertise on Google Shopping Network, there is no manual bidding allowed. So the pros and cons here are, if you do smart shopping, it's a really great way to start for the first time if you're not sure what you're doing, and then you can graduate to doing it yourself with a standard campaign. And then one question a lot of people ask me is, which one's better? I actually think they're both great and they both have their pros and cons. And I'm a big fan of running them together, actually. I've seen very sophisticated advertisers not do well with a regular shopping campaign, and we try a smart shopping campaign, and all of a sudden it was working fantastically. I've actually run these together. One thing I just make sure to do, if you have some items on smart shopping, just leave them alone in smart shopping and then take some other items and put them in regular shopping. We don't want the same items competing against each other. And, if all of this is very, very overwhelming, you're like, I'm not ready to put in a budget, but I really would like to maybe take advantage of free listings. Well, then all you have to do is set up your Google Merchant Center feed account, still optimize with those little tips that I gave you earlier before, and you can show up for free on the shopping tab. So starting in April, this was only available in certain countries, But now, since October 2020, right now, this is available worldwide. So please take advantage of this feature if you're not a fan of paying but still want to show up. So here is a list of links I've provided for just some helpful topics if you need it. And I am now available for any questions.
Great, thanks very much, Francine. Yeah, it's a lot really to take on for Google Ads, Google Shopping ads, and Google Shopping in general. I have a question from Yogi about what is the percentage of people using Google
I actually
Shopping
am not
tab?
sure of that answer. I will research it and come back to you. But I would say we do see with our customers, the majority of the shopping clicks come from the regular SERP and not so much the shopping tab. The shopping tab is more for people who want those free sorts of clicks.
So the Shopping tab is the Google Shopping that is free. That was
Correct.
introduced in the US in April. Yeah. So I guess the US has had this now for 6 months and it's open to the rest of the world like now. What have you noticed? Can you track how much traffic you get from that, the free part of the Google
I
Shopping?
have not been tracking that. I will say I'm a PPC person, so I don't usually do all the organic stuff. Not my forte. But I believe that still the majority of the clicks that I see come from the paid area, especially because it's so new in worldwide. It started this month. It's very there's still not a lot of information about how it's performing.
So there's another question from Yogi. How do you think that the impact of organic listings will impact the paid shopping listings? Maybe you can see what happened in the US.
Yeah, I do think that it will impact it because the shopping tab before was all paid. In the US, it started in April, where only the first line of the shopping tab. Let me go back so you can see a visual. So only that first line was paid, and then everything else below it was free listings.
But this is all free now.
Yes. So before, this shopping tab was all paid, and now the majority of it is all free listings.
Okay. And then within this free listings, you want to know like where you're ranking. So do you have any insights into how Google determines the grid or list view?
Unfortunately, I don't off the top of my head, but I will promise to come back to you guys with some more info on that.
Well, that's fine. We can ask you over on Twitter. It's very interesting to see that, now Google Shopping is back in the organic sphere. Because when I started in SEO back in 2008 or something, we had it. And then we were optimizing the Google Shopping feeds. And then it got taken over by Google, I think, paid search maybe 4 years later. I don't know, 2012 or so, or maybe a bit later.
I will say that it's very interesting to see how Bing adopted it very quickly as well. So it was released, let's say, the free listings in April. Bing then did the same thing, I believe, around May. So it must be a strategy that has been working for Bing. Works because Bing very quickly said, me too.
Yeah. Oh, so we'll just, I guess, Google don't really give too much information, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question. That example that you shared with us, just checking, is that sponsored, paid or not? On the right-hand side, it says sponsored, but those first.
So the first one list in the shopping tab will be sponsored. Everything else below it will be free.
Ah, okay. So you have to make sure that people are going down and clicking through.
Yes. So I just cropped this picture just to show the top, but the full listing you usually see in a regular SERP 2 lines. So first line paid, second line free, and everything below that free. Okay,
great. And then if we wanted to get started with Google Shopping feeds or Merchant Center, where would you recommend us go? Is there a course like we have for Google Analytics or Google Paid Search?
So one of the links that I provided is actually a template to create your own feed. But if you have a shopping cart, most of them have a plugin where you can easily download all your information right into the feed, where you don't have to manually create that that grid. So Shopify is one of the biggest online retailers out there. They have a plugin that automatically imports everything for you, and then you can just concentrate on optimizing those two things, which is the title and the description yourself.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. I think that's it for the time that we have, but would like you to, we would like to connect with you on Twitter and LinkedIn. So please, everyone, write your details in the chat or send to me and I will write it. I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of our speakers that took part in today's session. For today, let me just share my screen because I think it's frozen on that one. So I will do it in a minute. No, I will stop sharing my screen and do it again in a second. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for taking part in this event. We had scheduled 10 speakers. Unfortunately, Orit was not able to join us today, but hopefully another time. We had speakers from 7 different nationalities joining us from 3 different continents. And a big thank you to Anne for joining all the way from Melbourne on a national holiday and the first week of the when the restrictions were loosening over in Melbourne. It's been actually quite difficult in the state of Victoria over there. I know, as my sister's over there. So all the slides will be available. I'll probably send you most realistically an email next week. Thank you to our media partner, WebCertain. They also run an international event, International Search Summit. That was the beginning of this month. And wanted to also say thanks for Chunkable. So Nikki Carey set this up, and she actually designed the presentation for us. So appreciate the speakers also using this template. And also a big thank you to my sister over in Melbourne for doing all the artwork for not just Turn Digi, but also for the Tea Time SEO at Authoritas. She's over in Melbourne, and she's she does corporate and personalized wine tastings, maybe on pause for the moment, but she does a lot of SEO and social media and email marketing. So there she is over there, and we went over to, she was in Adelaide before, that was Christmas Day. So big thank you very much for everyone for getting involved, and Steve for inviting your cat to join us as well. I saw that earlier. That was very nice.
Yeah, sorry, I tried to keep the tail concealed, but then just she just wouldn't leave me alone. So sorry about that if it was distracting for anyone.
No, that was very good. So thank you. That was really good to see. Just how people, you know, we don't all live in a sort of a one box room. There's a lot of interaction when people are working from home. People have had their babies in past podcasts that I've been. So it's great to see all of you that have joined. The presentations, as I said, I'll send them out next week. But please still keep tweeting at Turn Digi. And also please keep tweeting out the individual speakers. So let me just put that in the chat here. So this is Steve's. You can follow him on Twitter. Francine, thanks for getting up so early, for joining us today over in Boston. It must be getting very Halloweeny over there, right, Francine? Yeah.
Yes. Halloween doesn't end. We can all celebrate at home.
Oh, yeah, good. Well, I really liked Halloween. I lived in the States a long time ago. I loved that trick-or-treating. So it was a very good holiday. So this is Poppy's details here, and she's also working at Strategic, like Levi too. So great session. We will probably have a Turn Digi event, but it'll be in French. It'll be coming towards the end of this year. So if you know anybody that has actionable tips that they want to share, like our speakers, even if they haven't spoken before, or if they're an entrepreneur themselves, please let me know. And also, if you know anyone that has a business in either South America, Southeast Asia or in Africa continent, let me know. I haven't had anyone dial in from there yet. So it's all about having an international presence, because I have moved a lot myself, 9 countries now. So always keen to have people coming in from 9 different backgrounds. I'm Jo Juliana Turnbull, SEO Joe Blogs, growth marketer authority, and also an SEO consultant. So thanks everyone for joining today, and we will see you very soon.